Hello and welcome to Agri History. In this episode, we will cover plums. Plums can be found in two different species. The European species, which is hexaploid, and the Japanese diploid species, alongside crossbreeds with closely related species. Within the European species, there are several subspecies. The Insitia subspecies, for example, contains bull-laces, damsons, marabelles, and St. Julian type plums. These types of plums are processed typically into jams, jellies, canned fruit, juices, and alcoholic drinks. Most European plums have a high enough sugar content to be processed into prunes. Nearly all prune processing is done in California right now, but other leading countries include Romania, Yugoslavia, Germany, and Hungary, as well as France and Chile. The Japanese plum, also known as Prunus salicinea, has been utilized for production in China and the United States, with China leading ahead. The term Japanese plum has been broadened to encompass Japanese plums that have been crossbred with other species. Now, plums reside in the Prunus genus, alongside cherries and peaches and apricots and several other species. The European plum is a hexaploid with 48 chromosomes. The Japanese plum, which draws its origins from China, is diploid in nature, having 2 sets of chromosomes instead of 6. The European plum, Prunus domestica, represents all the hexaploid plums, including the formerly classified Prunus insitia, which is now a subspecies. Previously, the origin of Prunus domestica was believed to be a hybrid between the diploid Prunus cerasfera and the tetraploid species Prunus spinosa. Recent genetic testing indicates that Prunus spinosa itself carries the genome from Prunus cerasfera plus a second genome from an unknown ancestor. This may indicate that Prunus domestica may be an advanced form of Prunus spinosa. Prunus cerasfera has been used for centuries in West Asia, from the Tian Shan and Pamir Mountains to the Caucasus Mountains. Many local cultivars have been selected for fruit. Dr. Yoshida suggests that Prunus cerasfolia is the progenitor of all plum species because of its native range, its ability to crossbreed with many other species, as well as its capacity to be used as a rootstock on many species. Low-chilling types of Japanese plum are located in southern China and Taiwan. Cold-hardy plums of northern China have been classified as Prunus usuracis and Prunus gymnodonta. These species are similar to the Japanese plum in nature. The previous 2 species mentioned were used in modern breeding programs, especially in former USSR regions. Next, let's talk about the history of crop improvement in plums. Plums have been grown in gardens and farms since the 1st century AD. Several cultivars grown in 1597 are still grown today, such as Ren Claude. One of the earliest plum breeders was Thomas Andrew Knight of England, whose work inspired the nurseryman Thomas Rivers to breed new varieties. These peaches were known as early Rivers, followed by early transparent Gage, Tsar, Monarch, and President. Research stations like Long Ashton, also known as East Malling, and John Innes research stations were used by the Europeans for breeding programs. Most of the breeding that happened during this time period were local selections of older cultivars. but with little formal breeding happening. But still, many cultivars were released. Early settlers of North America brought European plums with them. Plums thrived only in more northern areas. Some breeding was done with these cultivars, and the improvements were minor. Luther Burbank developed the cultivars of European plums, but only Giant, Sugar, and Standard became commercially viable. The first public breeding program in the United States was in Geneva, New York in 1893. This program released Stanley in 1926, which is still important in many countries. In the province I call home, Ontario, the Vineland Research Institution began breeding plums in 1913, and they released numerous fresh market cultivars adapted to northern North America, including Valor, Verity, Vision, V-Blue, and Voyager, all of which are planted commercially in Ontario. When it comes to Japanese plums, pits of these plums have been found in Japan 2,300 years back, and Japanese books that are 1,500 years old mention cultivated plums. Although Japanese plums have been grown in Japan for centuries, it is only in the last century that plum breeding has gone into full swing. On a side note, plum culture in Japan and Korea is so ancient that it's not possible to tell if the countries were ever part of the native range of these species. Over a century ago, the Japanese plum cultivars Kelsey and Abundance were introduced to the United States. The prolific breeder, Burbank, crossbred these cultivars with many other species, resulting in the cultivars Beauty, Burbank, Duarte, Eldorado, Formosa, Gavota, Santa Rosa, Satsuma, Shiro, and Wixon. These cultivars became the basis for the world shipping plum industry, both for production and breeding. Pure-blooded Japanese plums and their related species are rarely used for breeding in Japanese plum cultivation. So you can say that most Japanese plums right now are not pure Japanese plum. Very few varieties of pure-blooded Japanese plum are found outside of China. Most of the plums bred by Burbank are a mix of Japanese plum, Prunus simoni, and Prunus americana. The Japanese plum parent was used to breed flavor, color, and keeping ability into its resulting hybrids. Prunus simoni contributed firmness and acidity, and Prunus americana was used to provide disease resistance, tough skin, and aromatic qualities. Burbank was fortunate due to the fact that he bred improved variants of the American plum species. These Burbank plums were large and firm enough to ship long distances. This caused California to become the premier Japanese plum producer, and the industries in other states began to drop out. As these local industries declined, the breeding programs that were used were also diminished, and in time closed. California-bred cultivars of Japanese plum did not work anywhere except California, with the exception of Chile and some parts of Italy. To improve these varieties, they crossbred them with cold-hardy species of plum. And in the southeastern United States, the Japanese plums were crossed with local species, Prunus augustifolia, to enhance disease resistance. This resulted in cultivars of Japanese plum, such as Bruce and 6 Weeks. Unfortunately, since cultivation of Japanese plum is obsolete in all areas except in California, these new varieties are now pretty much gone, with very few exceptions. Now let's talk about something pretty cool. Chums. Prunus cercifolia is a progenitor of European plums, and it is a diploid species, so it was thought fit to crossbreed Prunus cercifera with the Japanese plum. This resulted in a new type of hybrid called a cherry plum, or chum, due to the small size of the fruits. These cultivars were never used much in modern breeding, although it had some pretty cool traits. This hybrid inherited earliness of fruit, cold hardness, and possibly self-fertility from its Prunus cercifera progenitor parent. In our current age, European plum breeding is naturally concentrated in Europe. Breeding is especially important in the former USSR, since most of their plum production is dried or processed into brandy and other products. For this reason, breeding for high soluble solids has been developed. The other traits that they are working towards include cold hardiness, shorter tree size, and self-fertility, alongside higher productivity. In the more southern reaches of these former USSR locations, larger size and higher sugar content, alongside purple fruit and high earliness, is wanted in their plum cultivars. In Western Europe, they have also bred new plum varieties. In France, their goal is to breed plums that ripen before and after the cultivar Rhine Claude, with equal or better flavor and firmness and high productivity compared to Rhine Claude. In Germany, Switzerland, Sweden, and Norway, most efforts in breeding are aimed at producing resistance to disease, particularly plumpox. Stanley, the cultivar, has been a good parent to transmit some tolerance to that disease. Italy is currently focusing on breeding larger and higher quality fruit, as well as vigorous productive trees. To that end, the cultivar Root Gursetter has been highly utilized for that purpose. In Vineland, Ontario, we are following a similar path as France. The goal is to breed prunes that ripen before and after the cultivar improved French. New cultivars must resemble and perform like improved French in order to fit the standard production practices for dried fruit. Most new cultivars are made through crossbreeding French prune with something else. The USDA has been working on a project of genetic engineering of plums in order to create plumpox-resistant cultivars. The result of this transgenic experiment and breeding process has resulted in the cultivar Bluebird. Bluebird is highly resistant to plumpox virus. In current breeding techniques, Japanese plum in California is currently working towards plums with some ground color showing, as a means to figure out when the right stage of maturity is for plum picking, maximizing consumer value. There's also been breeding for a greater range of colors such as red, black, yellow, or green-skinned plums. There have also been many known plum-apricot hybrids under trademark terms such as pluot, although there is some controversy due to no one knowing how much apricot is actually within the hybrids. These pluot cultivars are known as Black Diamond, Black Flame, Black Gold, Black Torch, and Sweet Rosa, all bred by Sun World International, a private breeding company. Other private breeding companies have been utilizing open pollinated seedlings, chance seedlings, or mutations for breeding purposes. These varieties are known as Red Butte, Black Butte, Grand Rosa, Angel Leno, Jonah Red, Betty Ann, Hiromi Red, Autumn Butte, as well as Citation Rootstock. That about covers all the plum talk we can do. See you in the next video where we talk about pears. Cheers!